Hi everyone, and welcome to English Digest. I'm Pat.
And I'm Erin.
And today we're talking about pets.
I love pets.
Which is a great subject. What kind of pets did you have growing up?
When I was young, I had cats and dogs. So different pets at different times, but
Same, yeah.
Yeah, more cats than dogs, but yeah.
Anything else?
Fish? No. Well, yeah, I guess we had some fish. Yeah, some goldfish.
We had some goldfish who lived a strangely long... I mean, those things are supposed to, die in a year or two.
Yeah.
I swear some of mine lasted, 5 years.
That's a really long time
Or
for goldfish.
my parents were sneakily coming in and just replacing them with very similar-looking fish.
It might have been it.
But I don't know. We had a couple of hamsters as well, one of which was friendly and the other one was very vicious and bit me a lot.
Yeah, one of our cats was like that. We got him when I would have been maybe 7 years old. My sister would have been 4. And we were still in the age of dolls. And the cat sort of became a doll. And so we would dress him up in doll clothes. And he learned pretty quick that if he was going to get away from us, he had to bite us. So
yeah, we've never dressed up any of my cats that my parents have had and I've had growing up. It just didn't seem something they would be enjoying.
Would you and your 3 brothers have had a lot of doll clothes lying around to do it, though?
Not necessarily doll clothes, but I collected sort of toy soldiers, and some of them were larger than others, so there was stuff. We dressed up a lot, so there was the stuff there, if not straight up dolls, but similar things that could be, put on a cat's head and over its arms. But no, they weren't having any of that.
Yeah.
Anyway, so we're talking about pets, of course, and pets we think are great. You can tell that from just listening. But why are pets great? What are the advantages and what are the disadvantages, if any, of having pets? That's what this article is all about.
Right.
So, now this kind of article, it's kind of about making an argument. That's the exercise it is.
Right. So this argument, what you're going to have to do is you're going to first read the instructions.
Sure.
And so our instructions say how long it's going to be, what kind of details you need to include, how many paragraphs you should use, and that sort of thing. So this argument should be around 120 words, maybe a little bit less, maybe a little bit more.
Yeah,
just
and
around
it's
there.
All going to be the pros and cons of having a pet, okay? So, in this kind of article where there's an argument that you have to make, you've got to put over your point of view, the relationship between the topic sentences and supporting details is really important, more so maybe than other articles. If you make a point, you're going to need to give maybe 2, maybe 3 supporting details to back the argument up, basically to say it's not good enough to just say it, you've got to give details.
Right.
It's got to be personal examples, it's got to be statistics, anything like that. Now, in argument essays like this, it's also always a good idea to show that you have considered the other point of view as well. Maybe even if it's only with 1 or 2 sentences or examples, but by doing that, you show the person marking your exam, the person, your teacher, whoever, that you have a full understanding of the topic. You're not just going, this is what I think, and this is therefore the only thing to think. You're saying, no, there's both sides of this coin. I just happen to prefer one of them.
Right. Okay, so before you can even start, you need to figure out how to structure the essay that you're writing. Now, as with all essays, you know you're going to need an introduction, a body, and a conclusion. And all of these you guys probably know by now, but the introduction needs to state the topic clearly. We start our essays always with a topic sentence that tells us exactly what we're talking about and what we're going to sort of expand on further in the article. Now, there are different ways to do this, and our article has a couple of examples, as we can usually see.
Yeah, it could be, again, personal experience. It could be mentioning recent news.
Right.
Could be various things like that.
Okay, so after you've written your topic sentence, the body needs to start with the topic sentence showing which side of the argument you are on. Then you need to follow it with your supporting details. Those are the 2 or 3 points that you are going to write up about to back up why you think it's a good idea to have a pet or a bad idea to have a pet, that sort of thing.
Yeah, and this body, this is also where you look at the other point of view.
Right.
Now, there are different ways to do this. When I was at school, I was told that some people liked that kind of style where one paragraph is all the pros and the second paragraph is all the cons. Other teachers told me that actually that's not necessarily the best way to write it. But it's still a valid way to write it.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of...
It depends on how complex the topic is.
Right. So, I mean, especially, like, because we are only working with about 120 words, starting a second paragraph is usually not a great idea because there aren't going to be that many words in smaller paragraphs sort of to back up. So maybe if your essay was like 200 words long, you could kind of divide it up, spend more time on each topic.
Yes, and sort of concentrate on, okay, let's first look at the question of health, look at the pros and cons of pets and health.
Right.
Let's look at finance, pets, pros and cons of finance.
Right.
Here, we're more likely to use one paragraph is the for and one paragraph is the against.
Right.
Okay, easiest way to sort of structure that sort of thing. But don't think that's the only way to do it. As you go on, start writing more complicated, longer essays, you may have to think about different ways to structure your argument.
Right, and that always check the instructions to see
exactly.
what you should be doing because some examiners will ask for different things than others.
Yep. So then the conclusion just should wrap things up. You've done your body, you've done both paragraphs, and when you wrap things up, it's a good idea to restate the argument you've taken and refer back to how you started it in the introduction, and your conclusion can probably be done in 1 or 2 sentences. Our magazine adds some information. It says you could add a suggestion for your readers to follow, and it's okay to do this as long as it's supporting your overall argument. Don't go somewhere new with your conclusion. That's not what it's for.
Right. And you'll see an example of that in our writing samples a bit later. So I know that at least one of them has a suggestion at the end, so that you can do this, but do this,
yes,
and it's based on
good advice.
Based on the overall topic.
Yes.
Okay, so in this article, you're probably going to be using first person as you'll be talking about your feelings and opinions and experiences. You maybe also include statistics and stuff like that, but you can usually write your opinion on these statistics and kind of put that in first person as well. Now, it'll likely be in present tense, though if you're talking about an experience you had in the past, you can use past tense as well.
Yeah, if you're talking about the pets you had as a kid, you'll obviously be using I had this cat or my family always kept dogs and so on.
Right.
But if you're talking about how pets generally affect people, then you use present simple tense mostly for general stuff like that.
Right.
Okay, so that's the overall idea. Now we've really got to get into organizing our thoughts, and this is where we get into the brainstorming. And the brainstorming gets us all the ideas we'll need, and brainstorming is writing down your thoughts and ideas, and through this you will get enough supporting details to follow up whichever side of the argument you choose from. You brainstorm basically everything.
Okay, and what we're talking about today, obviously, is the pros and cons or advantages and disadvantages of owning a pet. So what we'll do is we'll start by just choosing one of them. So let's start with the advantages of having a pet, and we'll create a list. What is good about having a pet? First, pets bring comfort.
Yep.
If you're feeling sad and you go home and your pet is just waiting to give you a big old hug and a kiss, it just makes you feel a lot better.
Yep, and of course this relieves stress.
Yes.
Pets relieve stress. You will feel happier and so on. They will also show you unconditional love. That's something, we'll explain that vocabulary word a little bit later. We'll park that for now, but they will certainly show you love.
Right, as long as you love them.
Yeah, it is a two-way street, people.
Yeah. Okay, they also won't judge you. So say you have a bad day. You had a car accident and it was your fault and you're just feeling awful, and you get home and your pet doesn't doesn't care.
Yeah.
He's not going to judge you for mistakes that you've made.
Or suppose you didn't wash up your breakfast bowls and plates. You just left them in the sink.
Yeah.
Your pet's not going to nag you and say, hey, you forgot to do your washing up this morning.
Your pet actually might lick them.
Yes.
Clean.
Okay.
Yep.
So pets also, they stop you feeling lonely by providing companionship.
That's an important one.
Yeah, we'll talk about those words again a little bit later. But yeah, you're never alone when you've got the cat, the dog, the hamster, the big spider, whatever it happens to be.
They also, this one's especially pertinent for young people. So pets help you learn responsibility. Now, when you're young, your parents might say, yeah, you can get a pet because you're going to learn how to take care of another living thing. And that's a really important thing for people to learn because when you're young, you're usually only taking care of yourself.
If that.
If that, yeah. Your parents are probably usually taking care of you, sort of thing. But it's a good skill to learn. And one of the things that you'll learn while you're taking responsibility for a pet is learning empathy and patience. Young puppies don't always know that they're supposed to go to the bathroom outside. And so when you're learning how to take care of a pet, it will teach you how to be patient with your puppy.
So another one for younger people, pets can be great playmates. They like to play with you, particularly dogs and cats, and just provide you with fun. Now, the next one's a bit more statistical. It's about pets. They actually help people live longer, happier lives.
Okay.
That's been shown with older people who have pets.
Yes.
They tend to be, and statistics bear it out, that they live for longer and they are happier and they are healthier.
Right. And one other very important advantage is once you have a pet, it becomes your family. When my cats in the past have died, it's heartbreaking.
Really sad, yes.
Yeah, because like that pet is, it's that little cat Fred is almost like my brother.
Okay, now there's loads more we could add to that if we thought about it, but we're going to move on now to brainstorming disadvantages. Like I said, we've got to look at both sides of the argument. So what are the problems that you could have with pets? Why are they sometimes not a great idea? So they can be a challenge to care for. It's
That's
the
right.
flip side. Yes, you will learn responsibility. You'll learn patience, but that doesn't mean it's easy.
Right.
Dogs can be messy. Cats can break a lot of stuff. You've got to clean them, feed them, walk them, all of that sort of stuff.
Pets also need a lot of time, care, and attention. For busy people, they might not be the best people to have pets because if they're never home, their pets aren't getting the attention. Maybe they're not getting fed on time. And pets, as much as people do, need routines. When kind of these routines break, they sort of get into mischief.
Yes. Now, also, a lot of pets, particularly dogs, need to be exercised. Now, my grandma is in her 80s, and she always had dogs. She lives alone, but now she doesn't have a dog. And we've sort of asked her why, because it would seem great for her to have a dog again. But for her, it's the difficulty of getting up early in the morning in the winter and walking the dog.
Right.
It's something she doesn't want to have to go outside and walk around in the cold, but she would have to with a dog. So she'd love the dog in the home, but she knows if she can't really walk it, then it's not fair to the dog.
Right. It sounds like she needs a cat.
Yeah. So pets suffer. She doesn't really like cats, that's the thing. Pets suffer when they're not cared for, by not getting walked, by not being looked after. Here's another one. Pets can be expensive. You have to pay for their food, their vet bills, shelters, could be professional washing, bathing, grooming.
Right.
Lots of expenses that come with a pet.
Exactly. Now, we mentioned people who travel a lot might have to put their pets in kennels or in cat or dog hotels. This can be hard on the pet because the pet doesn't really understand why it's not with you anymore and it's in this strange place. So that can be a bad thing for the pet. And another thing, if you live in an apartment like a lot of people in Taiwan do, some pets can be very loud and for this reason, a lot of landlords won't let you have pets because maybe you have a dog that barks all the time and it bothers the neighbors or
or it just could be, they don't want animals in because of animals can leave a lot of hair, animals sometimes smell.
They scratch the furniture, that sort of thing.
Okay, so we now have two lists, advantages and disadvantages, and all of that and thinking through that will make it easier for you guys to make a decision about which side of the argument you support. You can then pick some of these these brainstorm ideas as your supporting details. Now, you don't need to put everything we've just mentioned in your article.
No,
you just won't have enough words.
Yeah.
So you pick the ones which you think are the strongest arguments. And since you've brainstormed both sides, you can pick a few things from one and one or two from the other, which, as we said, means that your essay will look better because you're considering both sides.
Right.
Okay, we're going to take a break right here, and when we come back, we're going to start structuring it in a bit more detail.
Okay, welcome back, guys. So what we're going to do now, we're going to structure the arguments that we've come up for advantages and disadvantages, and we're going to do this by building an outline. But the first thing we need in our outline, of course, is our introduction, and we can do that in several different ways. So one way you could do this is to explain the topic and give a reason for the discussion. Another way you could do it is to mention public or expert opinions, maybe that you find online. You could also provide statistics or professional information from a vet's website or something like that. Or you could even start it just by expressing your own personal views. Okay,
so let's look at how we've done this. We've taken the examples from our writing samples. The first sample introduction is, when deciding whether to adopt a pet, it's important to consider the pros and cons. So this is the first approach. Explain the topic, give reasons for the discussion, basically. There's no professional opinion, no statistics. This isn't a personal view as such.
Right.
So this is definitely approach number one. What is the topic? Why are we writing?
Okay, and in sample number 2, the introduction says, there are a number of advantages to having a pet. So this example, as you can see, just goes straight into the topic, which is, what are we going to talk about? We're going to talk about advantages to having a pet.
Yeah, it could be a slightly personal view. You could just add the words I think, and there you've got I think there are a number of advantages. Then it's a personal view. Otherwise, it's just basically explaining the topic and what we're going to talk about.
Right.
So after you've made this introduction, you can start on the supporting details. Writing sample 1, for that, some of the main points from our brainstorming has been chosen. We've got, first, pets can bring you comfort, relieve stress, and love you unconditionally.
Right.
And those are all kind of related.
Yeah, that's why we kind of have grouped them together in one section of this outline. And then we go on to the next main point, and that's, they keep you from feeling lonely and won't judge you.
Okay.
So again, it kind of relates to a person's mental health and the pet's mental health too.
Yep, and the final one we've got is, owning a pet also helps develop empathy, patience, and a sense of responsibility. So again, we've grouped together similar ideas into the final point. So that's what we can do from our brainstorm. We can go, okay, 2 or 3 of these points could be kind of similar. Let's sort of bundle them into one stronger supporting detail.
Right. That's a really good thing to do. It kind of gives strength to your arguments as well. Okay, so for paragraph 2, both samples have chosen to look at the other side of the coin. So they took the advice and said, okay, I'm going to show the examiner that I know the other side, the disadvantages.
Yeah, it's not just good enough to write 120 words on why pets are great. It doesn't necessarily show that you fully understand the topic.
Right, okay, so the topic sentence is, owning a pet can be a challenge. That's topic sentence for writing sample number 1.
It's pretty straight up in there. Yeah, just like, okay, now let's look at the other side.
Right. And then for topic sentence in writing sample 2, it says, however, these same responsibilities mean that having a pet is not ideal for everyone. So this one, it kind of ties in the arguments that you used in the first paragraph and sort of flipped it on its head there and said this can also be a disadvantage.
Yeah, we'll see from writing sample 2 that the first paragraph ends with talking about responsibility. So it's kind of running that in a nice smooth transition into paragraph 2 to start to introduce the downsides.
Right.
And again, we pick some points from our brainstorming list for the supporting detail. So if you're not ready to care for a pet, it can suffer mentally and physically.
Right.
So the most important thing is the pet is the one who's suffering. We want to really make that clear here.
Right. Okay, so not only is the pet going to suffer mentally and physically, but something for humans too. Pets require lots of attention, consistent routines, and sufficient exercise. So those are the things on the human part of this equation. So the pet, if it doesn't have these things, it will suffer. But if you're not ready for a pet, you might suffer in doing these things.
Yeah, and then we've got owning a pet can be expensive, so we're adding the financial toll as well.
Right.
We then move into our conclusion, and we've got I'm in favor of owning pets if they keep the pet happy, healthy, and safe.
Right.
Okay? So the overall opinion, yes, get a pet, but only if you can look after it. And when we read the article, we will show how this covers and relates back to the main points that the writer made.
Okay, so obviously, like all outlines, this outline for this essay can have more details, supporting examples, transitions like however, nevertheless, those sort of words. And when you add all these things in, it turns it into a full essay. It's not just an outline anymore. But as always, you need to follow a logical step in your descriptions and when giving your reason. Don't just sort of put some examples in some places and leave them out in others. Make sure it all makes sense when you read it fully.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And the outline really helps with this because it will show you the bits that you want to follow, the points that you want to get across. And so you can look at the outline and go, okay, maybe I've got too much. We'll cut that out before I start writing. Or, it doesn't look as though there's enough here. Maybe I'll go back to my brainstorm and add another point. You can figure all of that stuff out in your outline to go, where do we need more or where have we actually already got too much? So let's look at how we've done this by going through the writing samples.
Okay, so writing sample 1. Adopting a pet is a major decision that should never be taken lightly. When weighing such a decision, it's important to consider the pros and cons. To start with, pets can bring you comfort, relieve stress, and show you unconditional love. They won't judge you for doing something wrong, and they'll keep you from feeling lonely. Owning a pet is also a great learning opportunity, especially for young people. Pets can help you develop empathy and patience, and learn how to take responsibility for something other than yourself. Owning a pet can be a challenge, though. If you're not prepared to deal with the responsibility of caring for a pet, it can suffer both mentally and physically. Pets require lots of attention, consistent routines and feeding schedules, and sufficient exercise. In addition to these considerations, owning a pet can be expensive, as the cost of veterinarian bills, healthy food, and appropriate shelters and toys quickly add up. Personally, I'm in favor of people owning pets, but only if they're ready to take on the task of keeping the pet happy, healthy, and safe.
Okay, so there is our article. We're going to look at a few of the kind of words in there that we think it's worth explaining, some of the phrases as well. We're starting off with the word adopt, the first word, and to adopt something is to take responsibility for looking after that thing, possibly raising something that didn't originally belong to you. So we talk about adopting a pet if you go to a shelter and you rescue it. You can adopt a child as well if it's not your biological child.
Right, we also talked about unconditional love. So your pet will give you unconditional love. Now, without conditions, such as if or only if, that's when we're talking about unconditional. So unconditional love would be love no matter what happens. So even if you do something wrong, your pet will still love you. That's unconditional love.
Yes. Now, one of the things you learn with pets, and you learn to develop empathy. And empathy is the ability to understand and share the feelings of another person, or in this case, an animal.
We talked about mentally and physically, and these are adverbs. We talked about suffering, mentally and physically suffering. And mentally refers to suffering, or anything else that occurs in your mind. It's related to the word mind. And physically relates to the word body. So if pet is feeling sad because you're not around, that pet is suffering mentally. And if a pet is hungry because you haven't been feeding it, they're suffering physically.
Yeah. Now we talk about pets needing consistent routines. Consistent is something that either remains exactly or mostly the same, while a routine is a set of activities that are done in the same order and on a regular basis. An example of this is a feeding schedule. And this is when a person or animal needs to be fed, how much they're fed, and so on. So it's just when do you give the dog or the cat the food? And you do need to make it consistent. So the cats and the animals, they know when the food is coming and what they can expect, so they don't really bother you when it's not their feeding time.
Right. It's the same with humans too.
Yeah, pretty much.
Okay, so we also talked about the adjective sufficient. And when something is sufficient, it's enough to meet someone or something's needs. So sufficient care means the pet is getting all the care they need.
Okay, the last word we're going to look at is veterinarian. It's a long word. It means animal doctor, and most people just say vet.
That's right.
It's much simpler just to say vet.
And to spell.
Yeah, very much so. Okay, let's look at the next sample and see how this writer has taken a slightly different approach. Writing sample 2. There are a number of advantages to having a pet. For one thing, pets provide great companionship. Take dogs, for example. Younger children who have dogs have a constant playmate that swiftly becomes a part of the family. For older people, especially those who live alone, pets can have an even more important effect. Studies have shown that people with pets live longer, happier lives. In addition, pets teach younger people responsibility. They will learn to care for the animals and how to put a pet's needs before their own. However, these same responsibilities mean that having a pet is not ideal for everyone. Those who have to work long hours, spend a lot of time studying, or travel for their jobs will not be able to properly look after their pets. Another disadvantage to consider is the financial cost of having pets. You need to feed them, pay for their medical care, and buy other necessities. In spite of these factors, I think that the pros of having a pet outweigh the cons. I'm glad I had pets as a child and would recommend it to those who are ready.
Okay.
So similar sort of approach. A lot of the points are the same because they're the ones that make the most sense. We've added, I guess the second example has got the stuff about older people living alone and getting that
more
extra
statistics.
Yeah, a little bit more looking at it with maybe a little bit more sort of science and studies in there as well. A couple of words to look at there. We've got playmate, which is a person or animal that you often play with.
Right. And we also talked about companionship. Companionship is actually the feeling of friendship or fellowship that you get from another person, or in this case, an animal, as opposed to being alone. So, you know, it's kind of the opposite of feeling lonely. Companionship. You have someone there to be your companion.
Be your friend. We also saw the verb outweigh. And if something outweighs something, it has more importance than it. Now, this could actually also just mean physical weight. A person could outweigh another person if they're heavier, but it's very often used more metaphorically to just talk about something being more important.
And one last verb we talked about was the verb recommend. When you recommend something, you suggest someone do something because it's a good idea, usually because you already have experience in that particular thing. You tend to be recommending something from a position of you know more about it than they do. Right.
So you're giving that idea as like, hey, I try this, it's good, it works, you should try it too. All right, that is the end of our article. We've talked a lot about pets, and now I'm wishing I had one.
Me too.
Let's go out and look at adopt some shelter cats or something like that. That sounds good. Okay, but remember, only get one if you can properly look after it. That's the key point here. Thanks for listening, everybody. For English Digest, I'm Pat.
And I'm Erin.
Talk to you again soon. Bye-bye.
Bye.